being with you.
So based on your 35 plus years with every sort of client, every sort of kind of company and marketing situation, tell us about those hidden opportunities and sources of big breakthroughs that you most frequently find. If you were to say these are the 2 or 3 I most frequently find, what are those?
Well, I'll give you 3 all in the same category. On my little hit list, there are 47 categories of opportunity, but one is price. And so I'll give you 3 in that category. One is levels of membership and continuity. So there are businesses like a pizza business, Diana's Gourmet Pizzeria, a chain of tanning operations called Sun Your Buns. And in both of those cases, they have a significant portion of their clientele locked into levels of membership with automatic monthly charges rather than pay by the pizza or pay by the visit or pay by the hour. And that does many, many things, but amongst it, it increases the total amount of each customer. The second in the same category of price would be the immediate upsell. Most people are familiar with that, if nowhere else, calling in to buy from a catalog or at the counter at a fast food place. What's important about it is that when an upsell makes sense, roughly 20% of the consumers say yes. And sometimes, in some businesses, the upsell can actually be a multiple of the original price rather than a fraction of it. And so this can have enormous economic impact. And then the third would be the actual issue of price elasticity. And 2 quick examples. Again, Diana's Pizzeria, not in Beverly Hills, not in Manhattan, actually in Canada, in a blue-collar market. Prices for large and extra large pizzas run from $23 to $48. And diagonally across the street, there's somebody selling 2 for $5. And another, who I just spent some time with, who's in our group, Gardner's Mattress. They are in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. There's 137 stores within a 50-mile radius that sell mattresses. There's 20 within a 5-mile radius. The average price for a mattress in America is $600. Their low price is $4,800. Their high price is $35,000. And they've had double-digit year-to-year growth in each of the last 3 years. So when you look at this category of price, very often there are major breakthroughs to be had by changing price, by changing the way you present price, by changing who you sell to and the prices that they find appropriate. The secrets that people don't know about this is that all prices are elastic, and that power in the marketplace really comes from premium prices and premium profits.
So let's expand on this, because I agree. One of the things that I advise people to do often is just raise your prices. And as you talked about, a lot of times price is self-appointment. So when somebody struggles with this idea that they're afraid to raise their prices, it'll scare off their customers, they're not sure how to justify it, what do you tell them? How do you explain the value of raising your prices and getting over this? It's really a mental or psychological hurdle. What do you do to counsel them? Because I'm sure you've had to do it thousands of times.
Yeah, just about every time. And, some aspect of it is the person's own self-esteem, business esteem, fear of criticism, all that. But what I think is most useful that I spend a lot of time on is really for them to understand that the product or the service itself ought not control price, but really the hidden psychological motivations that people have for buying things. And the value of those desires is much higher than the intrinsic value of an object. So again, some examples. I've done a lot of work in the hearing aid business, and the product is one thing. Being able to hear better is another, but that is not the primary motivation for most people to buy them. For most seniors, the motivation is being able to continue to live independently and a response to the fear of being seen addled by their adult kids and hustled off to the nursing home. And so that purchase is really about staying out of the nursing home, not really about hearing better per se, and certainly not about the item. And so these emotional payoffs are the value for the consumer, and they therefore are the things that really ought to determine price, not the liquid in the bottle or the insurance policy in the envelope.
Excellent. The emotional payoff is really the value. Now, one breakthrough that I've seen you focus on before with clients is status. So to help define this, you have a graphic in your book, No BS Marketing to the Affluent, that you call the hierarchy pyramid of income and power. Now, I know our listeners can't see this pyramid, but describe it for us and how status should influence our marketing.
All right. So if you envision it from the bottom up, obviously pyramid is widest at the bottom and narrowest at the top. At the bottom, we find generalists, sort of jacks of all trade, if you will, the family doctor in the neighborhood. Next tier up, we find specialists. The next tier up, we find certified specialists, somebody that some other authority figure has anointed. Next up, we find the certified specialist who is also positioned as an expert and an authority. And at the very pinnacle of the pyramid, we find the certified specialist who is also positioned as an expert authority and a celebrity. And the two big facts that people don't really understand about all of this is if you put next to this power pyramid an income pyramid, the higher up the income pyramid you go, the more people are paid for who they are to their market than they are paid for what they do or the products that they sell. And so when you elevate your status in the eyes of your market, you automatically elevate income. And when you understand that, that means that you are going to make a priority out of a strategic approach to place yourselves at the top of the status pyramid and as far away from the bottom, the generalist position, as you can possibly get.
That's excellent. So Dan, one more breakthrough that I want to cover with you is your quote unquote secret strategy of delayed sales. So touch on that one for a moment with us.
You know, I was just visiting yesterday with a client of mine in financial services, and he has switched to the delayed sale over the last couple of years with dramatic results. The delayed sale requires us to restrain our salesperson killer instinct that motivates us to jump on something as soon as it has a pulse and raises its hand and sort of rush to the sale in favor of a well-prepared prospect. And so in many, many businesses, real estate, health, financial services, we intentionally delay the sale in order to provide the prospect with a, for want of a better description, an information kit and the motivation to pay attention to it so that at their own pace, in their own home or in their own office, they are engaged in no less than 30 to 90 minutes of preparation before they ever get face-to-face with a salesperson in their home or office or at the salesperson's premises, before they get onto a diagnostic call with a salesperson. And this requires some courage, but it does many, many things. It makes the sales process more efficient. It makes the sales process less stressful for both salesperson and buyer, which then impacts on after the sale satisfaction, retention, referrals. It supports premium price, and it really can be implemented in virtually any business, even businesses that seem to require crisis level response. I have a member who is in the animal remediation business, which you might want to Google it. Essentially, it is people who have like raccoons or squirrels who've gotten into their house. They come out and get them out of there. But this company then sells a prevention and ongoing home protection service. And even they use a delayed sale and deliver what we call a shock and awe package by FedEx overnight in advance of the visit to the home.
That's interesting. So
yeah, that's, by the way, that's most people's first reaction is, and you know, it's so contrarian to our idea of the hot prospect, but it's really erroneous to think of a hot prospect as somebody who has first revealed an interest, as opposed to a well-prepared prospect who, the way I look at it is, before I'm face-to-face with anybody and am going to go through the process of trying to get money from them on a 1 to 10 continuum, of 10 being ready to hand over the wallet and 1 being completely resistant, I want them at a 7+ before I invest personal time in them. And so it really is a very different approach, and it can radically change many, many businesses.
When I sold real estate, I would send a shock and awe package as well. So what's in the shock and awe package? And just explain a little bit, because I think that's a brilliant part of the process as well.
It varies depending upon the business. And so the two principles about it are to deliver a lot more than any comparable or competitor does, and to show up like no one else in your field shows up. So in the backyard shed business, where I had a client we developed one for, all of his competitors simply sent out little trifold brochures and price lists. So in his case, a 2-pocket folder with a 16-page sales letter, a beautiful color brochure, a DVD of stories of people who own sheds and what they do with them. That's a big step up. That's a shock and awe package. Then you have the method of delivery. Is it mail? Is it priority mail? Is it FedEx? Is it messenger service? I have clients where the shock and awe package has an out-the-door cost of $20, $25. I have clients where the out-the-door cost is 10 times that. And it varies a lot by value of sale, value of client, and what you're up against, what you need to do to show up like no one else.
Yeah, just a brilliant idea all into itself. So Dan, we've talked about a lot of breakthrough ideas. Conversely, share some of the biggest mistakes that you see and deal with most consistently with clients.
Well, I'll name 3. 2 are redundant, so we can name them real quick. One is poor price strategy, which creates severe handicaps in the marketplace. Second is being product focused, selling what's on the wagon, which leaves you open to being very easily commoditized and sort of ignores where the consumer is. It's all coming from where we are and what it is that we have and want to sell. The third mistake, spend a couple minutes on, is not developing any unique factors, either in your service or your marketing. Last week, I went to a big home and garden show. And one of the things that I looked at was backup generators. And there were 6 exhibitors there, all selling backup generators. And if you put duct tape over the name of their company at their exhibit, and you cut their names out of the material they sent you home with, all of it was easily mixed up and interchangeable. No distinctive difference between one or the other, which, by the way, causes most people to default to price as their only difference. So the absence of developing unique factors is maybe one of the biggest mistakes. A member of ours, Reed's Dairy, they have 3,000 home delivery accounts, all of which were acquired by direct mail. So they are running a home delivery dairy business from farm to your door, sort of old-fashioned, highly profitable. Their marketing is largely direct mail. Their customers are treated as members. They have an annual Farm Days event, 2 days, where customers bring their entire family and friends and neighbors. And at the farm, there's picnics, there's hay rides, there's cow milking contests. Last year, there were over 2,000 people that attended this over a 2-day period. 1/3 of them customers, 2/3 of them guests who obviously can be converted into customers. So they're doing something very unique with a product that arguably is as commoditized as you can commoditize a product. So the mistake of not developing uniqueness is a big one. It impacts you in many, many ways. And yet there is always a path to uniqueness in every business.
So Dan, you see a lot of business marketing plans. Give us a couple of examples of common pieces that you see missing from these plans.
Well, the biggest thing that's missing is actually system or organization. Most businesses are run by random acts of advertising or marketing or selling, rather than by a complete process. And often those are random acts of desperation, by the way. So a couple of things that are often missing is inquiry, capture, and follow-up. So for example, at the home show, I visited 8 booths. I couldn't have made it more plainly known that I was not a looker, that I was a ready-to-buy-now guy, and no one in any of the 8 booths captured any of my contact information to do any follow-up with. They all sent me home with piles of brochures and a pat on the head. And it happens all the time. It happens with people who walk into stores. It happens with people who call. In professional practices, chiropractic, dentistry, etc., people often call. They typically will ask a price question about 50% of the time. The staff will answer the question and hang up, and that's that. Nobody has a process in place to capture the contact information and do follow-up. So the lack of a capture and follow-up system. The second, a big one, is the absence of a lost customer rescue process sparked by an alarm. So every business has some trigger point at which a customer is becoming lost. In the clothing business, that would be 4 seasons. So if your good customer hasn't come in and made a purchase at change of seasons, they probably did make a purchase from someone else and they're on the verge of being a lost customer. If you run a local diner and Harvey comes in every morning for his bacon and eggs, and Harvey doesn't come in today, he's in danger of being a lost customer. You really ought to check on Harvey, A, to make sure he's still alive, but B, he may have been enticed to go meet a buddy of his at a different restaurant that morning for breakfast, and lo and behold, Harriet, who waited on him, reminds him of his grandmother, and she burnt the toast exactly like his ex-wife used to, which is the only thing he actually likes about his ex-wife. And now he's going to go back there tomorrow instead of come back to your diner. And if he does that 3 days in a row, you've lost him. So every business needs an alarm that goes off when someone is about to be a lost customer, and then they need a process in place for immediately rescuing that lost customer. So those are 2 examples of systems that belong as part of a business's marketing, and very few people. Everybody has an operating system. If you take any business person and offer them a $100 bill to diagram his or list out their operating system, how they open the doors in the morning, how they assemble a sandwich, how they clean a carpet, everybody's got that, but very few people have a marketing system.
So speaking of systems, you're known for your quote-unquote renegade approach to marketing. You call it renegade millionaire marketing. So give us the general ideas behind this particular marketing system.
Earl Nightingale said something that resonated with me, which was that the majority is always wrong, and particularly about money, which the statistics that the Occupy crowd is complaining about, the 1%, 99% thing, that is proof of the pudding, that the majority is always wrong about money. And Earl said even if you didn't have a good model of what you wanted to do, you would look at what everybody else was doing and try heading in the opposite direction. So that's the big idea, that almost all marketing is incestuous. It's about incremental improvement of what somebody is already doing, whereas if you look at what everybody else is doing and think about how you could go in the opposite direction, you are often going in a better direction.
You use Warren Buffett and Howard Schultz, 2 of my favorite guys on the planet, as examples. Explain why they are the kind of renegade you're talking about.
Well, one of the practical applications of this idea is in violating industry norms. Another is in violating popular fad and peer pressure. So if you think about Schultz and Starbucks, what he violated more than anything else is he violated pricing norms. If you think about Buffett, he violated peer pressure and popular fad by refusing to invest in tech stocks when everybody else was running to them, thereby escaping the bubble and the bust that just about everybody else encountered. Favorite, of mine is Walt Disney, and Walt violated the industry norms about entrances and exits for amusement parks, as well as violating price. So violating industry norms is a big renegade approach. This is really all about a relatively simple process, which is, what is everybody else in my industry doing? And now let's not do that. Let's see what we might do that is contrarian, that is in the opposite direction, that is radically different, and how would that work out?
So Dan, if the listener is sitting there going, man, this all sounds great, let's warn them about some of the pitfalls they might encounter. why do you think it's difficult for people to be renegade marketers? I mean, we would have a heck of a lot more renegade multimillionaires if there wasn't something holding people back. So what are those self-sabotaging things that we do that people need to watch out for in their efforts to become renegade millionaire marketers themselves?
You're right in that there would be a lot more renegade millionaire marketers if they understood the power of it and if they sort of got out of their own way. Everybody around them engages in a conspiracy to rescue them from this kind of behavior. So one of the things that's really in the way is fear of criticism and disapproval. And so employees, peers, colleagues, family, as soon as somebody starts to kind of get out there with their marketing, everybody begins to try and pull them back. It's extremely important, I think, to get to the place that the only person who really gets to vote is the person who's giving you money. I tell clients, your opinion doesn't matter. My opinion doesn't matter. Your mother-in-law's opinion does not matter. Your staff's opinion does not matter. Your trade association's opinion does not matter. The only opinion that matters is the person who's giving you money. A second reason why it's difficult is a false concept of failure. In the direct marketing world where I live, we really think in terms of testing, and we know almost without exception that in order to get to what works, we are going to test a lot of what doesn't work. And so we really start every project with what I call a test matrix, and we fully expect to be discarding more than we're keeping. And if we looked at that in terms of success and failure, or if we did it sequentially rather than simultaneously, we would do ourselves in. Also, a lot of people think that just having to give up on something constitutes failure. There's what I call the principle of the swift sword, that you move ahead often by stopping what's not working, just as you move ahead by finding what is working. I would also say that most marketing and most business people tend to be incestuous, what I call marketing incest. And it has its roots in the way people get in business in the first place. So most people get into business because they like doing the thing, not marketing. And then they've arrived as a stranger in a strange land. And so they look around at what everybody else is doing. Just like if you transfer into a new junior high school, you look around at what everybody else is doing because you want to fit in. And so if you transferred from Boston to Dallas, about the third day, you go home and you tell mom, I got to get some cowboy boots. If you transfer from Dallas to Boston, you go home after the third day and say, Mom, I got to get rid of these cowboy boots. And so adults do the same thing when they get into business. And there's enormous pressure put on people by this. And so we talk about the importance of consistency in marketing, but the equal importance of avoiding conformity in marketing. And I think that's very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've heard it described as tunnel vision before. And I really like the idea of building an immune system to criticism. Now, one of the ideas you talk about in your Renegade Millionaire is work as autonomy. So let's talk about that and its links to great marketing.
Well, autonomy, being able to conduct business on your own terms, have clients you want and not have clients that you don't want, have hours you want, not have hours that you don't want, be in the place you want, so forth, at the price you want, et cetera, et cetera. Autonomy is the ultimate aspiration, right? I mean, really, why are we trying to be successful in business in the first place? Why are we trying to have a high income in the first place? Why are we trying to create wealth in the first place? So it is the ultimate aspiration, but it can also be a tremendous attractant to the marketplace. I have a saying that says, there's no long line to see the wise man seated at the bottom of the mountain. And so often the person who is conducting business on their own terms is more attractive than the person who is overly eager, overly pliable, organized to function as I want it to function. I, for example, almost 10 years ago now, exited the road warrior game and re-engineered everything so everybody comes to me. People put events in my town, so I will speak at them. All my mastermind and coaching groups come to me. All my phone calls are clumped into one day a month by appointment. I take no incoming calls otherwise, and the rest of the time I get to focus on other things. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I won't bore you with the details. What I will tell you is sort of like your reaction to the delayed sale. The first reaction everybody has to all of this is, well, that's fine for you because you're Kennedy, which I was doing this when I wasn't. Or their reaction is, my business is different. I can't do that in my business. And if we had enough time, you could name an industry or a profession, and I could give you a case history of somebody who has transformed their business or their professional life to be one of great autonomy and to impose their will on clients. And in so doing, not only have they made their life better, they have increased the demand for them and increased their income at the same time.
So I just want to extend on this, Dan, because you have such an extreme example. So you are one of the most highly paid marketing consultants and the most sought after marketing consultants, and yet you do not have an email account. You cannot email your office. Just explain a little bit more of that, please.
Well, so there's several things about me and the internet. I mean, I'm not anti-internet as a marketing media, and I should not be misunderstood on that point. And the internet's been very good to me and is very good to me, and a lot of money flows to me because of it, and a lot of money flows to my clients because of it. I personally have enormous distaste for the whole thing and refuse to use it. In terms of control, though, which is where you wanted to go, you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't use email inbound or outbound. I don't own a cell phone. I don't take unscheduled inbound calls. And for me, it is about productivity and control of access. And so the more junk communication, the more easy media that communication is permitted to take. So, of course, I came up when you had a choice of, mail or FedEx, and then we got fax, and now we got email, and then we got texting. And what happens is every time somebody has a brain fart, they send you a text or an email, and there's an expectation of immediate response. And so for me, that would be deadly. I am required to be extremely prolific, and I'm required to meet deadlines. And so I live in that world, and I have to tightly control access in order to control productivity. But really the same thing is true of most people. So like the intake process at our office for a new client, somebody will communicate typically by fax because it's either that or mail, sometimes a voicemail message. We don't answer live. And they will then be told that the process begins with a one-page memo describing who they are, what they want, and that comes in by fax. And then there'll be a week delay before I review it because everything is moved to me once a week on Friday, and then activity tails the following week. Most new clients are then driven to an initial day of consultation. The micro specifics of all that are fascinating to people. I've written a whole book about it, but they are not as important as the principle or the strategic concept, which is to exercise the best possible control over environment, access, working relationships, customer-client expectations, communication, so that you really can perform at your highest level on your most valuable competencies. Sort of the opposite of all that is the guy running through the airport, conducting an important telephone call with an important client. I mean, the most amazing trend to me, and if women could see it, it would confirm their suspicion that men are all goofballs, is a business person standing at a urinal in a public restroom, talking on a cell phone, and actually conducting an important conversation with somebody because he felt compelled to take the inbound call, or even worse, he's using that time to make an outbound call. Now, he's got more manual dexterity than most women would give guys credit for. But even so, sometimes he also has wet shoes. But the most important thing is, how can you concentrate? How can you focus? How can you be at your best for that call under those circumstances? And so one of the things we sell to my clients is, yes, you may find these rules unusual and frustrating perhaps at times. But for example, with a phone call, when you have your scheduled 20 minutes with me, you know that I am at my desk, I have your file, I have prepared, and you have my undivided attention.
I had to recover from my laughing fit here, just with the visuals that you were providing with the wet shoes and the male dexterity. And there's
Yeah, it works a lot better with a live audience.
yeah, and it's such a brilliant example, Dan, and I aspire to be even more and more like that. Of course, your example is the pinnacle that we all should strive for, but even just 1/100th of the kind of rule set to control your environment and your time and your focus and your productivity, the increase in results would be dramatic. So I appreciate you providing the pinnacle of that example, and then we can all work towards that. So then, final question for you today, Dan. I want to ask you a question I ask many of our uber successful experts and thought leaders. As someone who has done great things, made millions, worked with millionaires, what's the single best piece